wanted to bring today's episode to the podcast talking all about panic attacks and really how this can be some strategies to help when you're on the fertility journey, whether you've been dealing with panic attacks for years or maybe you're experiencing them during the fertility journey. We're talking about some mind-body techniques to really help you cope and overcome them, and then also what you can do from some physical strategies as well as to help prevent them to begin with. So excited for you to listen to today's episode. Let's go. Dr. Sandra, excited to have you on the podcast.
It's great to be here.
Awesome. Can you share your work and really how you came to do this work?
Sure. Well, it's a long story, so I won't bore you with all the details because it started back in the 60s. I thought I was going to be a teacher. And at the time, those were our options: to be a teacher, a nurse, a secretary, and I chose education. And I like to, as I look back, to thank my failures. And one area where I did not do so well was in student teaching. That was the era of open classrooms and very little discipline, very little structure. And so my supervising teachers thought, I just can't handle a classroom. And so I thought, oh, what am I going to do? My career as a teacher is over. Well, I stayed in school and I got a master's in learning disabilities and spent a number of years helping kids with learning disabilities, was a psychoeducational diagnostician, had a classroom. Then I taught people how to become teachers in special education. And at that time, I started to get really interested in something that did not have a name. It was mind-body medicine. I was teaching stress management for teachers. I was leading parent groups and started to introduce breathing techniques. I had they were little cassette tapes at the time, were relaxation tapes for kids. And I then went into clinical psychology and spent over 35 years as a clinical psychologist. My focus was on health. So I was seeing people with a lot of physical conditions. And it was always that mixture of physical symptoms combined with anxiety and often panic attacks. And so I then became inspired to learn all I could about nutrition, and that led to an interest in functional medicine. So I trained with the Institute for Functional Medicine and was getting a lot of requests from people who had been trained as health coaches to teach what I had specialized in, which is this combination of positive psychology, cognitive behavioral work, where you're focusing on your irrational thoughts, putting that together with functional medicine principles, which is root cause medicine. And so I partnered with the Institute for Functional Medicine and created a school to train health coaches. And now we've been in existence about 10 years and have trained close to 5,000 coaches all over the world. And they're doing incredible things.
Yeah, that's an amazing piece where they're like, oh, you can't handle a classroom, to going on to basically teaching other teachers, leading the way with this. I think you're the only one that's partnering with IFM as far as the certification for health coaches. So yeah, it's interesting where our career goes and kind of what full circle kind of thing, I guess, for you now, going back and teaching others to change their careers and helping all the people that are struggling with their health right now. And obviously people listening to this podcast are on the fertility journey, trying to figure this out. A lot of times they're given a diagnosis and they think that IVF is the only option for them. And then I see people going through failed cycles and maybe being called a poor responder, or maybe they've had pregnancy loss and doing cycle after cycle, spending tens of thousands of dollars. And so the mental emotional stress of that alone can be just heartbreaking. And then also maybe they were dealing with mood issues before they were trying to conceive, which we've done many podcast episodes on anxiety, depression, and things, looking at your neurotransmitters. And that's all the whole piece with functional medicine of how we can dig deeper as why that's it started to begin with. But today we're going to be talking about panic attacks. You wrote a book about that back many years ago on panic attacks, and really let's kind of talk about panic attacks, what that is. I don't think someone that's experienced a panic attack is probably like they knew, well, sometimes they don't realize what it is because you think you might be dying. I've never experienced one, but maybe let us know what a panic attack is, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So when I was in my 20s, I had very severe panic attacks. And so let me share a story of one that was particularly awful. It was there was a blizzard. I lived in the Chicago area, and there was a real heavy snowstorm, and I had been teaching school at the time. As there was no school, and I decided that we had a long driveway, and there was no snow plows coming, and I decided I'm going to just go out and shovel the driveway. So I set out doing that, got back into the house, and I had this thought. They always had all these warnings on television and in the newspaper at the time. Don't shovel snow. If you're out of shape, you can get a heart attack. So I had that thought, and literally the same time, I started feeling pain up my left arm. And then I started feeling pain in my chest. And I started being unable to breathe. And I thought, well, I'm out of shape. I'm having a heart attack. And so that escalated it. Now I thought I was going to pass out. My husband was working in the city at the time. He wasn't home. So I thought, I'm dying. So I called 911. I had an ambulance came, took me to the local hospital because I literally thought I was dying of a heart attack because I had a whole history of heart disease in my family. My mother, my uncles. When I was young, I had witnessed many people have a heart attack. My father had a heart condition, and so that was my weak spot. And so I get to the hospital and get all the tests, and this was in the 70s. Okay. They give me a paper bag, and they said, breathe into a paper bag, you're hyperventilating. So that's what I did, and I felt better. And I would have several other episodes. One time I was pregnant. I was at the gym. I was doing the stair climber. And again, I started feeling faint. I thought I was going to pass out. And I remember getting in the car and thinking, should I go home? Should I drive right to the hospital? That is an intense panic attack. It's defined by thinking that you are dying. So I didn't have a heart condition. I was not dying. What was the panic attack? It was that thought that I'm dying. And let me explain how that works. So the example that I love to use is to imagine that you are coming home and there are no lights on. Maybe there's a power failure, or for some reason, there's just no lights on where you live. You pull up to your street or your driveway, and you step down out of the car. Now you can't see anything, and you just step on something, and you feel something wind around your leg, and you think it's a snake. Okay, I want you to imagine that experience, and imagine in a split second what you would feel. Your heart would be racing. Every system of the body is either going to be on overdrive or it's going to be shut down. And now imagine that you open the door a little bit more so the light from the car, it comes on, and you look down and you can see it was just a garden hose, let's say, that was on your driveway. So now you start to say, oh, I'm safe, basically. Oh, wasn't that silly that I overreacted, that I scared myself? It was really stupid. Okay, the essence of everything that we tell ourselves, every emotion, it's in two categories. It's either snake or garden hose, danger or safety. I used to tell people it's like sorting the laundry, and you have two laundry bins, darks and lights. There's no in between. You are either safety, all clear, or you are in that danger zone. And what people don't understand is that when you trigger that danger response, which is the height of the sympathetic nervous system going into overdrive, it doesn't shut off quickly. Think of it like somebody pulls a fire alarm. There's a false alarm. Okay, and now you have the fire, so all the emergency vehicles are coming to check it out. Well, they don't just spend 2 seconds at your house and say, okay, all clear, we're going. They're going to check every place, every system to say we're all clear. And so when people are not, they're in this state of very, very heightened anxiety, which we call panic, and maybe they start to do some breathing, or they've been told, you should meditate, you should get yourself quiet, but they're always judging, it's not working. Well, it can't work because your body shuts down slowly. It's like going from room to room, shutting off lights one at a time, where that's coming down. But whereas triggering it is like you turn on a light switch, it's instant. Why is that good? Because your body is designed to keep you safe. And so when I had that panic attack and I had that thought, I'm dying, I'm having a heart attack, instantly, it feels like it's simultaneous. And that's why people often don't associate it with their thoughts, because they're thinking that it is something physical. And the average person who's suffering from panic goes to doctor or doctor. They might see the internist, their cardiologist, their psychiatrist, because they're thinking, oh, it's based on past trauma and they have to have all these years of therapy. Whereas really the essence is this combination of doing some physical quieting techniques with some mental cognitive quieting techniques. So I was able to completely get rid of my panic attacks, where now people say, oh, you're so relaxed, nothing bothers you. So the body can learn. We have new neural pathways that we create every time we talk ourselves off the ledge, every time we focus on, again, putting ourselves into that safety, that seeing garden hoses, and we can turn snakes into garden hoses. And there are many strategies for doing that.
Yeah, and for someone on the fertility journey too, obviously there can be a lot of worry and frustration, over feeling overwhelmed, and then maybe they start maybe having panic attacks during this whole journey because you put so much pressure on yourself. Anything you wanted to say with this as it relates to, your reproductive health and the fertility journey? Anything you wanted to share?
Sure. So we know that the body shuts down your reproductive process when you are stressed, because they're think I'm in danger. This is not a good time to conceive. So what shuts down? That shuts down. But for example, your breathing rate speeds up. Your blood flow to the periphery is constricted, because you don't need to be having blood flow there. You need for the large muscles, because you got to fight like hell or run away from the perceived danger. And so by focusing on bringing front and center anything that will bring you joy, any thought, and there are a lot of techniques I used to teach people for how to make that happen. It does start with breathing. So in my day, we didn't call it breath work, because I don't like that term breath work. It's not work. And there are techniques for breathing that can actually set off a panic attack, where you certainly would not, because hyperventilation is very much involved. But a soft breath, feeling that slow breath begin to develop, and then you send warmth through your heart. And something as simple as, and this is highly personal. So when we talk about relaxation strategies, what fits for one may not fit for somebody else. So you find your own images, you find your own way of creating this calmer, peaceful way of being. So what I would do is I would imagine the warmth of the breath flowing through my heart. And then you send that warmth wherever you need extra love. And so in this case, it could be your reproductive organs. You imagine the warmth, you imagine, and you can use colors, you can use sounds, you can use these kind of images. It's very much a creative process of using those images to put yourself in a better place.
Yeah, because this could be, chronic stress for years too. And as I would say to people all the time, maybe you're just stuck up in the fight or flight piece, and your body is, is in survival mode. And as we start to, we do obviously do a lot of functional lab testing, but it's equally as important with the mindset piece to be able to work on the mental emotional side of this stuff with looking at your thoughts and all sorts of mindfulness techniques. So maybe I guess we can just talk a little bit about so some of the symptoms if someone was having a panic attack, like heart palpitations, sweating, trembling, chest pain, like you're saying, fear or sense of impending doom, breathlessness, dizziness, and physical issues like stomach aches. Anything you want to add to those?
Well, I think that at the end of the day, the main thing is the basic physiological processes. So let's start with breathing, because that's something people can identify. In my case, you're extreme panic attack, you are hyperventilating, but there's other things that could be going on as well. So what is that like? Okay, when you take a breath, are you breathing from your chest or are you breathing from your belly? And years ago, I did a demonstration. I did a lot of biofeedback. I helped people with biofeedback. They used to be big computers with wooden boxes and dials. Now there are apps you can have on your phone. There are great devices that can guide you to relaxed breathing. One I just discovered, it's called Moonbird. It's really, really cool. Muse, there's many, many on the market. So what can happen is you are, notice, when you take a breath, do you like, it's like gasping? Do your shoulders go up? Well, now you're creating this constriction and you're not getting enough air. Try to blow up a balloon by going like that or by taking a belly breath. So you push your belly out. So you put your hands over your belly, you push it out, and you get more air. It's actually your diaphragm that is moving down. When you exhale, you pull your belly back in a soft way. It's not like an exercise like I take a lot of Pilates where you're pulling everything into your center. It's not that. That is a good type of breathing, but for relaxation purposes, we want to talk about expansiveness. So that's one pattern. You're breathing from your chest. The other is you're hardly breathing at all. It's like you're a deer in headlights, and part of the response that's a sympathetic fear response is like, you're a deer in headlights. And so you're holding your breath. So that's the second pattern. The third pattern is you're panting, like, you're so scared. Often we see little kids do this. They're crying, they're upset, and they're panting. So are you breathing very fast? It's interesting with an Aura ring, if you're tracking your sleep, it can show you that respiration rate at night. And so simply just slowing it down can have wonderful impact. And then the third is hyperventilation. What is that? That's what I was doing. I think I was doing all of those things that I just mentioned, but hyperventilating is where you inhale and you're so concerned that I can't breathe, I'm going to pass out. You inhale, you don't take the time to exhale enough. So you're then inhaling again. So you're getting this combination of too much oxygen. You're not taking the time to fully let it out. So you get into that hyperventilated state. What happens then? You feel spacey, you feel dizzy, you feel like you're going to pass out. And that's one of the scariest things about a panic attack. So that can be tied to hyperventilating. So all of these can be unlearned. I taught literally thousands of people how to breathe in a relaxed way. With biofeedback, I would have people these were belts, and I'd have them put one belt on their belly, one on their chest, and then you could see on the computer screen where you're breathing from. Are you breathing from your chest? Are you breathing from your belly? How fast the breath is, because you can see, is it like sharp mountain peaks or is it rolling hills? I'd have them imagine they're drawing rolling hills and then slowing it down. And so then when they were not seeing it on the computer screen, they would go home and they would practice that. So that is very, very important, but it's not enough, because panic attacks are also this cognitive process. It is the thought. What makes it a panic attack? You're thinking you're awfully sick. You're thinking you're dying. You're thinking like my case, you're having a heart attack, or you think you're crazy because you have this spacey feeling, this feeling of unreality, like out of body. So you think you're going crazy. So the key is to tell yourself, this is my body. I've scared myself. And my body is acting the way it should. It is I'm being put into this fight or flight response, because that is our biological response to be safe. If you're suddenly in the forest and you see a wild animal, you have the choice to fight or run away. And to do those things, you need these. Every system that's going to help you gets activated, and every system, like your reproductive system, that's not going to help you gets shut down. And so the key then is to have those safety thoughts. Now, there's some things going on that are also going to contribute to be more likely that you'll have panic. So when I was having my panic attacks, I was not exercising. I was also eating very, very badly. I was binging on sugar. I was not getting enough protein. I was not eating, I probably was deficient in B vitamins. I was not having omega-3. I was not eating fish, taking fish oil supplements. And so when you put your body into balance nutritionally, as well as focusing on things like a good having movement throughout the day, that's going to help a lot.
Yeah, exactly. It's all connected, right? You're wondering why you're having more anxiety and you're pounding down all these pot like sodas and sugar and the B vitamins, yeah, are a huge one. I was talking to my husband about the other day because when I first met him, he literally his leg would always be like boop boop boop, like bouncing with the leg
Yeah.
like this. He's like, now I know when I have my B vitamins, that bounce will just stop, or
Yeah.
he'll find himself pacing around. I'm like, what are you doing? You're pacing the house. I'm like, could you take a B complex, please?
Yeah. Or you're
Uh,
magnesium deprived. There's
exactly.
so
Yeah,
working with a nutrition professional who can help you can identify deficits through testing, for example. So looking for a good functional medicine practitioner can help a lot.
absolutely. Yeah. And I don't think people realize that because right now it's just like doling out the SSRI and you're going down your road and you're taking a whole bunch of them and the side effects that that has, and you never really get to the underlying reason of what's, out of balance. And then also being able to, looking at the testing and making those nutritional side of things, but also the mental emotional side of things, like you're saying with this piece, being able to deploy some of these techniques. So let's talk about anything more you wanted to talk about with maybe some cognitive behavioral therapy. Anything you wanted to say there?
So yes, so the key is remember I had said that the panic attack happens in an instant because that's like your body is has to go into that reaction because thinks you're in danger. When you see an emergency vehicle coming down the street, they're speeding because they're getting to the danger place. That has to happen, and we come down from it slowly. So you tell yourself that, okay, my body thinks I'm in danger. It was a false alarm. You can even picture a false alarm. Imaging really helps. Soon I'm going to feel better. This is a great opportunity to practice these mind body skills that I've been learning. It's a good opportunity. I wonder what will happen if I really slow down my breathing. Oh, look, my shoulders are up to my ears. I'm going to tense up and then I'm going to let them go. But there's a strategy that is also really effective because again, it's either safety or danger. And one of the ways to get into the safety zone is to distract yourself, to lose yourself in something else. Now, men, it can be like, I remember when I was having panic attack, my husband would like, put on the TV, I'll just watch some TV. I would get up in the middle of the night thinking I want to watch TV. It's passive. Years ago, I had an individual that I was working with, and she had very, very severe panic attacks, like several times a day. And so she would call me a lot. Oh, I'm dying. This is the worst ever. Okay, I would say, Seal, she had a big house. Seal, what closet, she's an elderly woman, and what closet would you like to clean out today? So, oh, okay, I'll go in the basement and I'll tackle this one. She would call me an hour later and she said, I feel much better. I got so lost in deciding what to keep, what to give to the kids, what to throw out. And she was distracted. So engaging in any activity that's going to pull focus. It can be something like, and it often is what you like to do. So anything that requires a mental challenge. where you really have to figure things out, like at people who digging into following a recipe, getting involved in a conversation, doing some challenging game where you really have to focus. That can be really, really helpful. Now, it's hard to get into initially, and that's where having a coach, having a guide who can support you, often just talking it through is wonderful. Using imagery is helpful. So it is very personalized, but turning on some music, laughter is really, really helpful. So anything that can get you to focus somewhere else. So that distraction is really, really helpful to because what happens when you're distracted, those thoughts are neutral. Let's say you're figuring out a recipe, or I do a lot of crafts like knitting. You got a pattern and it's really complicated and you got to read it carefully. So those are neutral thoughts. And as a result, your body is thinking, oh, this is safe. It's not getting that emergency. Again, every thought, every image we have, every emotion we have is sorted. Is it danger? Is it safety? Is it sympathetic or a parasympathetic response?
And what about past trauma? How does that play into
So past trauma is the danger response. You start thinking, you start picturing some trauma. And I think there's a lot of talk these days about trauma, and definitely it's real. It can also put you in a mindset that you're damaged, and this idea that you have trauma in your body and you need all this therapy to deal with it. Often that can work at cross purposes, because what I have seen happen is somebody goes to a therapist, and let's face it, there are a lot of bad therapists out there. You can go into this session and you're talking about that experience. Now, what happens when you talk about the experience? This comes from the research or theories of operant conditioning. As you're talking about it, so you're talking about that past trauma, the body thinks you're still there, not as intensely, but thinks you're still there. So you're putting yourself into a sympathetic response. Dr. Jim Gordon, who's done a lot of work with people who have gone through severe trauma, he would have them in a group. When somebody started reliving, started talking about their trauma, he would get them up, dancing with other people, focusing on the here and now. And so you cut off that thought and you turn your attention and you say, well, that's not happening now. What do I want to do now? Maybe I want to go, the sun's shining. I want to feel that sun on my face. It's going to feel really good. I'm going to call a friend. I'm going to focus on something really good that happened in the past, or particularly something that I can feel right now. And so you access your senses. What can I hear? Maybe I'll put on some music that I love. What can I touch? What can I feel? What can I smell? Maybe I'm going to go into my kitchen, and I'm going to get lost in creating something, a meal that will be nurturing. So you get into the present, or you focus on how you want to do what you want to do now for your future self. And that is much more effective than focusing on that you're and even telling people, oh, I've had all this trauma in my past. We want to talk about psychological capital. So we all have psychological capital that comes from positive psychology. It's a focus on what's right with you, not what's wrong with you. Psychological capital are our strengths, our character strengths. We have an ability to have courage. We have an ability to express gratitude, to appreciate humor. We have the ability to love, to forgive, and there are these character strengths that are essential to thriving. And so, as you nurture those strengths, you build resilience. That's your psychological capital for whatever happened in the past or whatever may come your way.
Yeah, we have positive psychology as part of our program too. We have have people do the character quiz then to be able to see, because a lot of times we're trying to fix what's wrong with us or what we're not that great at. Well, why don't we take, maybe we're an 8 at something, make that a 10 instead of focusing on the two and trying to make that a 5. And what are we really like? What are our strengths? And then looking for those those three good things in the day. The more you look for the good, the more you'll find it. If you're out looking for garbage, guess what's going to show up? So it's interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, the positive psychology. I love that piece. Anything back on, you were talking about some bad therapists, like is there some, obviously maybe going to some of the associations, making sure people are accredited, but any tips when someone's, because I think people, they find someone and then they weren't a good fit. And then now all therapy is bad and it's an absolute joke. And it was so horrible and I'll never go back to it. But maybe they just, like you said, had a bad experience with a therapist. So what is it we can do to, I guess, interview someone, look for someone that's going to help us as we're, dealing with things like this?
Yeah, so first and foremost, you want to make sure that they have the appropriate credentials. There are a lot of people calling themselves a therapist. Are they really a therapist? I've heard recently that there are people who had their licenses revoked as psychologists, and now they're out there calling themselves psychotherapists, therapists, coaches, life coaches. So you check into their background. Where were they trained? Are they cert? If somebody's calling themselves a psychologist, they need to have a license. They need to be a licensed clinical psychologist. So that's number one. You can read reviews, but at the end of the day, it boils down to your comfort. Do you have rapport? And the way that a therapist can have the most impact is when they appreciate you, they don't come with their agenda. Often that seeps in to a therapy session. In other words, and we see this in for nutrition professionals as well. If you are a vegan or a carnivore and that's your orientation, and you think everybody should do that, with a psychologist, maybe you have training in trauma-informed coaching, and now someone comes to you and you see trauma. A number of years ago, when I was still practicing, it was really big to see sexual abuse, and you had families literally being torn apart. Now, of course, there were legitimate occasions, and we don't want to deny someone's reality. But if that's the therapist's orientation and belief, there's ways that seeps in to how you are working with people. So you want to be very, very careful about those hidden agendas. A therapist may have a bad relationship with their parents as a child, and now they're literally therapists who are separating adult children from their parents. It's a big trend right now. So you want to be aware. If you feel uncomfortable, or if you're feeling that the therapist is pushing their agenda, run in the opposite direction. It's also, this is a field where there's a vested monetary interest in keeping people in therapy. When I was a health psychologist, it was short term because we were focused on solutions, stopping panic attacks, getting rid of your migraine headaches, your IBS, for example, your chronic pain, feeling better. And they would tell me that they would go to therapy, and often they would say, you have to be in therapy for life. Because you are damaged. So we see people who are in therapy for years and years and years. If you are not getting better, if you are not improving, then a therapist is not for you, or that therapist. Also, I think that there's a danger of making this into it, and as we talked about earlier, that you're broken and you need to be fixed, and everything is about going back to your childhood trauma. That's where health coaches can come in, because there's tons of research now that they support emotional well-being and mental well-being. And they can work on things like, what are you eating? How are you moving throughout the day or not moving? What's your sleep hygiene like? How are you managing stress? And these are things that often therapists do not touch upon. They are focusing on staying in your head, whereas health coach, and when I was a psychologist, I was actually doing health coaching. That was in the day before it was a thing. But I would go out and have walking sessions with my clients, so that they would experience that joy of movement.
Yeah, I think we need to trust. Well, I know we need to trust ourselves, right? Because sometimes I know people have said to me, "Oh, the therapist didn't resonate with me," and like, "Oh, it wasn't any good." And then they thought it was them, right? Of being maybe it was just a wrong fit, and that's okay. We go on to the next one and find someone that works. And like, obviously we have mindset coaches as part of our program too. So it's being able to have someone with a health coaching background that we can work on all aspects of your life. And sometimes therapy is necessary too, depending on what you're dealing with. But a lot of times a health coaching approach can really shift the needle into a more of a solution focused side of things.
Yeah.
Um,
And becoming more and more necessary because we are experiencing a severe shortage of mental health professionals. New people are not going into the field. Many older therapists are retiring. So the wait list to see a therapist is quite long. And health coaches can be a wonderful alternative. And we have the research data to back that up.
we have many therapists that are part of our program that are their schedules. It was just insane what how many people they're seeing on a daily basis, and that like people talk about mental and physical, effort. I'm like that level of so many people's problems coming in. You're seeing 8 patients a day, 40 hours a week. At the end, your brain is just gonna like that's too much, and we see people are just completely stressed out from that and absorbing everyone's you try not to absorb it doing this work, but absorbing everyone's problems, and that can be a very heavy load on people. So
Yes.
therapists are burnt out.
Yes, that's so true.
And so any other thoughts there, I guess, on panic attacks, anything that we've missed?
To be very positive. In other words, this is something that is you are able to stop a panic attack and your body will learn to recognize physiologically when you are starting to put yourself in that overdrive and letting go of it. So you want to have that optimistic viewpoint that I can do this. And so, and that comes from having that sense of hope and imagining a peaceful state, imagining what, seeing it in your mind's eye, seeing how you want to be, imagining slow breathing, imagining your muscles are not tensed up in a relaxed state, and imagine your mind clearing and then wait for it to happen.
Yeah,
Uh,
because some of us don't even realize all day long we're sitting at the Zoom call with our shoulders up like here, and we're feeling panicked, and we're not, our breath is in our chest, we're not breathing. And when you start to deploy all these things, like you're saying, breathing into the heart space, kind of from heart math, and yeah, looking at that side of things, that's what actually gets you out of the fight or flight. And this state is gonna, help you get pregnant. Um, and
yes.
so and so, where can everyone find you? Where can they find you here? What's anything you'd like
Sure,
to?
they can go to functionalmedicinecoaching.org. On Instagram, we're Functional Med Coach. I am personally Dr. Sandy. That's DRSANDI. And feel free to reach out. We also need millions more health coaches, and many people who have gone through issues themselves now want to serve and give back.
I love it. It's a great field, growing. And so, any final thoughts for us on our topic today, Dr. Sane?
Yeah, so I will leave you with the thought that what's real in the mind becomes real in the body. And so, what's real in your mind is I'm damaged, my reproductive system is damaged, it'll never happen. The body interprets that. You are now in that, like sorting laundry, you are in that dark pile, you are in the danger zone. And so, you shift that thought. What's real in the mind? What do I want to be real in the mind? I'm imagining my body awakening, my body, however you picture growth, renewal, fertility, you picture that happening.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Sure. Wonderful talking with you.